Welcome to this, the third and final e-assessment insight session in the run-up to the e-assessment question conference taking place on the 23rd of June. Today we're going to be talking about the higher education sector and the positive impact that digital exams have been having on student experience, a topic that's very relevant to many universities around the world. And we're also going to be looking at the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the assessment process and what universities in Scandinavia have been doing to address this through remote assessment. And I'm delighted to have with us today Anja Sisarica, the Strategic Relations Manager from Inspira Assessment, to talk to us about all of these subjects. Anja, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Matt, for this lovely introduction. Hello and welcome everyone also from my side to this e-Assessment Association Insight session. It's a pleasure to be here. As you heard, my name is Dr Anja Sisarica and I'm from Inspira Assessment. So what are we going to talk about today? The world has changed and indeed so has education during the pandemic, but millions of students still need to get their opportunity to demonstrate their skills by sitting an exam. How can we handle high-stakes assessments during the COVID-19 emergency? Like you, we have been asking ourselves the same question, and we're hard to address the new normal with an innovative approach. We recognize that the student satisfaction is a key metric on which educational institutions have depended on both before and now during the pandemic. To that end, after a brief introduction to Inspira Assessment, you're going to hear about our case study with the Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, which focuses on the impact digital exams had on their students taking the exams on their own devices. Then, as today exams need to be taken safely from home, we're going to talk about two main strategies we see the educational institutions are adopting in their transition to effective remote digital exams, and of course, Inspira's response to those needs. So who are we at Inspira? We are on a mission to make assessment more inclusive, fair and relevant to the 21st century by offering the most innovative, reliable and secure end-to-end e-assessment service. We are a well-funded, high-growth edtech company headquartered in Oslo, Norway. I have about 90 fantastic colleagues and I'm personally based in Milan, Italy. We offer an e-assessment service called Inspira Assessment. It's a cloud-based assessment platform that supports your entire examination lifecycle. Part of our unique capabilities is to drive continuous improvement through integrated data analysis and learning analytics. So, why e-assessment in the first place? Let's see a short video about the benefits of e-assessment for different key stakeholders.
Traditional paper-based exams no longer reflect the digital world we live in. The key to success is not just in putting the traditional exam paper online, but taking advantage of technology and creating smarter and more authentic assessments. Digital high-stakes testing is first and foremost about people. For students, online assessments provide the familiar digital tools that they are used to in everyday life. Academics can collaborate on creating quality exam papers and marking them fairly. Administrators can control and report on the exam process efficiently. And going digital leads to savings in printing costs, logistics, and time. Inspira Assessment is a secure, cloud-based platform that covers the entire examination process from STEM to art subjects. Our success comes from working closely with our customers in order to meet their specific needs, every step of the way. Inspira Assessment, developed by Nordic e-assessment innovators, trusted by world-class institutions.
As you heard in the video, we indeed work with some world-class educational institutions, and here you can see some of them. Today's session focuses on higher education, but we work also with awarding bodies, schools, and governments. So let's get back to the topic of today's session, the student experience of digital exams. Digital assessment was enacted in Norway back in 2011. It's a long time ago, it feels now. Thanks to the students who explicitly campaigned for this transformation to happen. You can see here the snippet of an article titled Ode to Digital Exams, published in the University of Oslo's student newspaper, campaigning for pen and paper to be replaced because students already then didn't believe it can be used to fully express their knowledge. The University of Oslo listened, as their head of IT says here in the quote, "Everything we do is about putting in place good solutions for the students." So in result, we have been working with the University of Oslo since 2014 and delivered hundreds of thousands of digital exams, and they're one of our key trusted partners today. That's all thanks to the voice of students. Now, that student demand is continuing today, and that's what brought us to another side of the globe, to New Zealand in 2019. The motivation for this pilot project, which took place at the Faculty of Law and Victoria Business School, was that they wanted to evaluate and deliver, as it says here, alignment of student experience with assessment and later with professional life. So it's all about providing that authentic assessment experience by going to e-assessment solutions. Then, of course, special attention was given to assessing pedagogical impact of the new mode of assessment, optimization of marking and feedback given to students, and finally, digital exams were seen as a contribution to their environmental sustainability strategy. So after the digital exams were completed in Inspira assessment, a student survey was conducted, and it reflects high adoption of our technology. As we can see here, there were 563 students taking exams during one semester, and most of them have opted in to take the exams on their own devices and to take digital exams in the first place. So what was part of this pilot project was that students were given agency to decide themselves whether they want to proceed with digital exams and then how they want to do it. So computer labs were there as a support. And then what we saw is that there is a high confidence after taking a digital exam, and that was far more after they had a chance to try it. So 40% more after they had a chance to see how it looks like. Then we can see that the majority of students thought that their experience with digital exams was excellent. Also, they have stated that the overall digital exams experience was something that they would prefer. They also, in the majority, agreed that the software was intuitive and easy to use. And finally, the communications, which is, as we've seen, very important in the implementation of digital exams, was also rated very highly. And finally, they agreed that most of the students actually want to have digital exams. So we see an uptake similar to what we saw in Norway back in 2011. Students want to do exams in this way and would recommend digital exams to other students. We can see that also the student response exceeded the university's expectation. So the quote here is from the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Hitford. Given that for the vast majority of students, 99%, this was the first time they had taken a digital exam, and that this is the first time we as a university have trialed digital exams, such a positive response is remarkable. So what have our partners at Victoria University of Wellington learned? Here are some key insights. For me, this is the key lesson learned reported. Significant impact can be experienced even during and after a 3-month pilot. So the student experience can be improved and a more authentic assessment can be offered even in a short period of time. And that is very relevant to the situation we are facing today when institutions face very accelerated innovation and digital transformation cycles. You can read more about this case study on the link that is here on the slide. But I want to talk also about BPP University, and here you can see a video that adds to the point of authentic assessment from Ishan Kolhatkar, Director of Group Education Technologies at BPP University, in this short video.
It's not the case that people will now sit for 3 hours and handwrite an opinion as a lawyer. They're going to type that on a computer. So if that's one of the assessments that they have to carry out, which it is, we want them to do it in the same environment that they'll do it in real life. And so digitising became a really simple option. In certain circumstances, we allow students to sit their examination abroad in a controlled environment, so a university abroad or the British Council, which means that we've had Inspira assessments in the Cayman Islands, in South Korea, in Malaysia, and across Australia. The business case at BPP for digitising exams has had 2 parts to it. Part of it is cost. It's true that we'll spend less money shipping exam papers around the country. The other aspect of it is the student experience. We know that the chance of losing an exam script, although rare, almost diminishes to nothing once you digitise exams. The student experience on Inspira has been overwhelmingly positive. Students are really happy, whether they're comparing it to a previous e-assessment system they've used, or simply to paper and pen because they've never been assessed in this way before. This is something our students want. It improves their student experience. It's something that they find desirable and helpful. And so overall, we know that we have a really compelling case to digitise all of our exams.
If you'd like to know more about e-assessment at BPP University, I'd like to invite you to join Dr. Peter Alston at e-assessment question conference on 1st of July in the summative assessment track. I'm personally looking forward to it. So back to what we were discussing in terms of what's happening here and now. Did the pandemic change the priorities for student experience of digital assessment in higher education and beyond? So yes and no, I would say. Here we see the targets for 2025 published in February 2020 by JISC, just before the pandemic kicked off. We see that the e-assessment should be authentic, accessible, appropriately automated, continuous, and secure. Now, as technology providers, we are strongly supporting all of these principles. You can say that these principles are our DNA at Inspira, but what we see, however, is that the security target for assessment development is both becoming controversial and very needed. These are just examples of titles you could have seen in the newspapers in the past few months. Are remote exams really an Orwellian nightmare? What is the right way to prevent cheating on the remote exams? Many universities have been asking this question, and so did we at Inspira. How can we ensure academic honesty in e-assessment, especially when the exams are being taken remotely from home? So there are 3 main approaches. One is educating students and boosting academic integrity through ethical discussions and engaging students in right communications. The second approach would be with the redesign of assessment. Well-designed exams are the strongest means to reduce cheating. The first question to be asked is, therefore, can you redesign your exam to assess your students' learning outcomes with an alternative form of e-assessment where you design an exam in such a way that students will not benefit from communicating with each other or using outside resources on the internet. But there is also, to that open book option, a closed book exams option with unique test papers so that no student is receiving the same version using automated test assembly. So this strategy of redesigning e-assessment with remote home exams has been used by, for example, our partner University of Bergen. Then there is another strategy that focuses on that security target, and it involves increased security layers for academic dishonesty to detect and deter offenders. Sophisticated technologies are playing an increasing role in helping to detect and deter academic dishonesty. And I would say then as educators, you have to take part of 1 and 2 whilst we're solving point number 3. So in the past few months, we have been developing a remote proctoring solution called Inspera Remote Exam that is an add-on for our own assessment platform, Inspera Assessment, that we talked about earlier today. These days, we have the first users delivering their exams with this solution in beta. And I wanted to show you a bit of our design thinking about behind this project. So obviously, we have contemplated how to make these exams fair and accessible. So it needs to be device agnostic, and it needs to be supporting offline delivery. So if there is an interruption in the connection, then of course, at Inspera, we have privacy by design, and all of our data is stored in the EU, and we are compliant with all the regulations, and therefore it requires consent and proper storage of the sensitive information. And finally, we understand that e-exams are not a standalone thing, and in consequence, remote proctoring solution, it needs to be part of universities' digital ecosystem, so fully integrated and affordable. So this is our integrated approach to remote exam, and I would like to discuss especially these points of, firstly, allowing facial recognition using artificial intelligence. Then we're also having our lockdown browser, Inspera Safe Exam Browser, which is also available in Inspera Assessment Platform to secure all access to unauthorized, so non-whitelisted programs and resources. Then we allow for scalable monitoring because the invigilators are notified and can intervene only when required. There are recordings and alerts and an interface to support the review of events that are looking suspicious. We support also offline deliveries, as we mentioned, so temporary loss of internet connectivity. So this is how it looks like. An invigilator could see when a suspicious event has happened, that is the record, alert, and review option, and the level of confidence. So this is using the facial recognition feature, and it autoplays from the first suspicious event. And then also there is an overview of events, and there is an alert if the person who started taking an exam is changed in front of the screen. So there is also a good overview of that. So to conclude, we have now a choice in front of us. Well, universities have a choice to make. Will you redesign your e-assessment, or will you do remote proctoring in your home exams? The choice is for the universities to make, but what is a common denominator in both of these strategies for effective exams during this pandemic and also beyond is the assessment and digital exams are here to stay. So we don't want to only migrate from pen and paper to digital, but also transform the student experience for the better. Thank you for listening. I'd like to use this opportunity to invite you to a free online event we're co-hosting with the University of Bath called Digital Examinations Forum, where you can hear our partners' stories and take part in live Q&A. Looking forward to keeping in touch any way you prefer. And yes, many thanks again, and back to you, Matt.
So thanks, Anja. That was a really interesting presentation, some really interesting insight into both the technology and how some of the universities have been using it, some of the benefits and some of the challenges that you have to think about with remote assessment in particular. And it struck me as really interesting because student experience is such an important thing for universities to consider at the moment. And so it's really interesting to see demand from the students coming forward for digital exams. I think that's really encouraging and something that a lot of universities will be encouraged to hear. And as you say, there has been some negative press around remote assessments. And so it is an area we have to think about, but it's great to hear that there's an overall positive mood in moving towards digital assessment within universities. So thank you once again. If you have got questions for Anja about her presentation, then please do join us immediately after this presentation for the live Twitter chat, where Anja will be delighted to answer questions that you have about the content that she was going through there. But Anja, thanks once again for joining us today.
Thanks to you, Matt.
And finally, just a quick reminder about the e-assessment question virtual conference, which starts next Tuesday, the 23rd of June at 11 a.m. This year, the conference is being presented as a series of 9 easy to attend 1.5-hour live presentations with follow-on Q&A discussion, and has been themed around 3 areas across the 3 weeks that we're running the session. Week 1 will look at themes like looking ahead to the future, 21st century skills, and innovation in assessment. Week 2 will look at assessment on a global scale, summative assessment and formative assessment. And then finally, in week 3, we'll be looking at things like technology and testing, assessment within higher education, and privacy and regulation. The conference promises to be a really interesting event, and I encourage you to find out more from the website, which is shown at the bottom of the screen, where you can also register for one of the delegate tickets. If you've missed any of the previous e-assessment Insight sessions, then you can find these recordings within the Insight Sessions section of the conference website. These recordings include David McVeigh's really interesting case study presentation 2 weeks ago around the process of transforming Egypt's national summative assessment process from pen and paper to online delivery. And last week's really insightful presentation from Luella Morton, giving an overview of the remote invigilation and proctoring technologies that are available to help support assessment delivery. So thanks once again for joining us for this pre-conference Insight presentation. And remember that Anja is going to be available to answer any questions you have on her presentation in the live Twitter chat that starts immediately after this presentation. Just use the hashtag #eassess20 to join the conversation. Thanks very much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at the e-assessment question conference starting next week.